I had a lot of people mad at me when I moved into industry. I have people who are still mad at me, but
Well, I think it's important for people to know why you made the move.
yeah,
What?
I made the move because I wanted to be the mole, right? I wanted to be the one
Yeah.
to tell on these people that might do this bad stuff again. And I said that when I was doing my interview. I really took the interview sort of nonchalantly because I thought they're
Mm.
never going to hire me because I'm going to tell them exactly what I think. And I did.
Sure.
And I said, well, if anything goes wrong, I'm going to tell everyone, right? I
Yeah.
said, I don't need the job that much. I can always get a job.
Yeah.
But, and they said, well, that's why we want you. And that was a great answer.
Welcome to the Building the Noise podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Building the Noise podcast. I'm Matt Teresco, and joining me today is a patient advocate from a mid-sized biotech organization, Shelley Gerson. Shelley, thank you for joining us today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, so as we had previously discussed, and for the audience members that have seen some of our other episodes, our goal with Building the Noise is to ensure that patients know that throughout our country, there are individuals out there in the industry or in disease state nonprofits that are doing work every day to support patients. What I'd love to understand from you, Shelley, is what does that work look like for you?
Oh, that's a big question,
Yeah.
actually. Right at the moment, I do work for a mid-size, closer to small biotech company, and I lead several development programs for people that have autoimmune illness
Hmm.
um, as we do trials to see if our medicines could potentially change treatment options for people. And then I
Yeah.
also work with communities of people who currently do take one of the medicines that we have and support those communities with education, support, conversation about how to manage living with whatever chronic illness
Yes.
they're dealing with every day in between those big moments of diagnosis and treatment decisions and every other big moment and dealing with how do you just live your life
Yeah.
with all of the new challenges.
I love how you put that it's really more a focus on the day to day, not the big moments. Because I would say that most of the industry is always focused on the big moments, the diagnosis, the treatment decision, the appointments. Tell me more about the I would say small moments is wrong. It's not
Yeah,
maybe
they're
the
not
way we want it to
small.
be, right?
Right.
But tell me more about that.
Well, I can tell you it's without a doubt, people typically do not understand their insurance until they need to, right? And understanding your insurance for, strep throat or COVID is one thing, but to understand your insurance when you have a chronic illness, potentially needing or wanting the best treatments that may be not on formulary or too expensive according to the insurance companies. How do you manage that? Because there's just so much, as you know very well, that we don't know when we've signed up for our insurance plan or when our employers give us the insurance plan as part of our compensation. So when you're not feeling well, you're faced with those. Typically, that's the diagnosis time and the treatment decision time. And you're trying to figure that out at the same time. And you may be being told, sorry, we're not going to cover this, or no, you can't see Dr. A, but you have to go to Dr. Z, when really you want to go to Dr. A. How do
Yeah.
you get through that?
Your
So,
own networks, right?
yeah, right. So
Yeah.
and that's like more of a big thing, but other
Hmm.
things could be, how do I talk to my family or my friends about the fact that my energy levels are depleted
Sure.
by noon or by two, and then I'm not going to come out every night or even
Yeah.
once a week,
Yeah.
and that I'm not not wanting to be with them, but I just can't.
Yeah. And what's this? I would imagine there's obviously patients the stigma that they feel from,
Yeah,
or even maybe it's a bias in their own mind that they feel people will perceive them in a certain way, so they isolate themselves. And from my understanding, a lot of the work that you're doing is helping those patients to recognize that no, this doesn't define them, but we can work best together.
absolutely. I mean, that's one of the things that I love doing when I'm out and doing patient education is first to ask people to tell me who they are
Yeah,
outside of their condition, because that's not who they are at
I
all.
love that. Yes.
Yeah. So tell me, who are you? What do you do? What's important to you? Who are the people that are important to you? And remember that those things about you, the skills that you have, haven't gone away now that you have a new diagnosis,
Yes.
and you can rely on those skills still.
Yep. Fantastic. So with that said, you bring up a great segue with who are you? And really what I want to get a sense of from you, my question is more, how did you get into your role? I believe by taking a look at your LinkedIn and having some discussions with you previously, you came through from the nonprofit side. But tell us more about that.
Well, my father had a genetic condition called hemophilia A,
Hmm.
which is typically passed. The actual clinical condition is passed from mother to son. Fathers pass the trait or the mutation to their daughters, who often don't have clinical symptoms, although we do recognize that many people do, many women do. Uh, I happen to be lucky in that a genetic anomaly happened where I happened to be born with a severe form of this hemophilia A, and it was
Lucky is an interesting word. Yes.
yeah, lucky. It was discovered at age 3 months when I went in. My parents took me in for my 3 months injections and bled
Yeah.
profusely in my thigh. And luckily, my father, knowing what hemophilia looks like, he was able to get connected to the right physicians very quickly and right away because he had formed, I wouldn't say an official nonprofit organization, but a group, a community of other people, other men at the time with
Sure.
hemophilia. So he connected me right away. And then that reinvigorated him to stay more involved in the community. And he served on the board of the Hemophilia Foundation of Michigan in its iterations, and
Wow.
helped to start the camp. Some of the board meetings were actually in our dining room, and I'd sit under the table while they were having the board meetings and I'd listen to what was going on. Didn't understand any of it.
Yeah.
So I was brought through the patient organization through their camping program all the way through teenagehood. And I worked every job except for cook and lifeguard.
Sure.
Good. I was camp director for many years of the camp, which changed my life and hopefully changed other people's lives. And then I went on the board of directors
Okay.
of the organization. I was on the board for 9 years. I was president for 4, and then worked with the national organization. I was co-chair of the national meetings for 2 years, and uh, that was my foray
Yeah.
into nonprofit.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then you
So
found your way over to industry with the
yes,
nonprofit side.
which is really a surprising thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, many people don't remember this history. It's a history that people in the world of hemophilia can't forget. But back in the 70s and the 80s, we took plasma derived
Yes.
treatments. So treatments coming from donated blood.
Hmm.
And the manufacturers um, chose to continue to sell these treatments, even though they were aware that hepatitis C and HIV were in those treatments. So as a result, we had many people pass away and die who were infected, and we were raging against
Yeah,
industry.
sure.
And
Yeah,
I was part of that. I was part of that rage.
I would imagine so.
And then as the president of the organization, one of my jobs was to make sure that the current industry, the people that weren't necessarily part of the bad decisions that they made
Hmm.
early in the 80s, but who were industry representing those bad guys, right?
Yeah,
And I really wasn't very nice to them. I was
good.
holding them to very much higher standards than anything else or anybody else, and really putting my foot down quite firmly about what they could say and what they couldn't say and do at our events. But interestingly, because of that work, I did have a company who had an interesting new innovation for treating people with hemophilia A and hemophilia B come to me. They were not part of the original group of industry partners who were part of all of that history. And they asked me to come in and help to set up the patient engagement
Mm,
plan with a few other people from the community. And they selected us not just because we had hemophilia. We were nurses. I was a teacher and a therapist. We had, we even had some nonprofit directors come on board. So we had solid professionals, but with
yeah,
patient experience who came
experience.
in.
Yep.
And that was just a beautiful, unique experience. And they listened to us, and we were able to influence from within. And they operated in a completely different way.
That's fantastic. To take us back, you had referenced that camp changed your life. Can you
Hmm.
tell me a bit more about camp, about about how it was developed? Obviously, for children with hemophilia, I would imagine. Um,
Yes,
but I think that a lot of people suffer, no matter what their disease state is, with feeling isolated and don't
yes.
know about these types of resources. I would love to hear how camp changed your life.
Well, interestingly, the camp was established by a well known hematologist from Michigan State. And he said it wasn't for the kids, it was for the parents to get a break from kids with hemophilia because,
Okay.
the way the treatment was, it was all reactive. So there was a lot of trips to the hospital, a lot of bleeding to address, and parents were generally very on edge all of the time, which is different from now. But so he helped start this camp so that the parents could get a break and that we could all get together as kids. And
Yeah.
I
And be
remember,
kids.
yeah, and to be kids. And I remember pulling up and seeing other kids on crutches. We bleed internally into our
Yeah.
joints,
Yes.
and it causes a swelling, and it's very painful. You can't bear weight on your ankles or knees if you have that going on, and or in your elbows. You can't do anything.
Sure.
And pulled up, and I see all these kids in wheelchairs and on crutches. And my dad said, all of those kids, they take shots like you do because my medicine came through
Sure.
a shot or an IV.
Yeah.
Said they do, and he said, yeah, they all have hemophilia like you. Now it was a little bit interesting because I was the only girl. Uh, there were two other girls there, but they had
Sure.
different eating disorders. So what happened was uh, those boys actually created a situation where it made me want to be the best bleeder on the in the history of the planet.
That's fantastic.
So I can bleed just as much as you, and I show up and do my infusions when I was supposed to, and like see
Mm.
the same medicine as you, and uh, and then I became lifelong friends with them. They were my brothers, and we could share our war stories and do
Yeah.
silly things, have infusion races and
Yes.
things that nurses don't want to
Infusion races.
that was bad. The
Yeah.
nurse
Well,
not like that.
it's impressive though. I have daughters. I have young daughters, as we've discussed, and they make me better. But at the same time, I have nephews that are little boys, and they're harder. But so to really get get access to them and to um, get them, to see you differently is not an easy feat. So I commend you on that.
Yeah, I mean, and it's still the case that women who carry the condition, meaning they have one copy of the mutation, they aren't being seen even by the medical community very well, even today, because, for a lot of reasons
Yeah,
where doctors aren't staying up with the new information and new research. So it's still kind of an issue in the wider community of people with hemophilia that women aren't always recognized as being some people that bleed.
sure. Is it a set misconception, so to speak, that oh, you're female, that won't impact you?
Exactly. And that's just, with rare conditions, medical
Right.
students get like a paragraph,
Yes.
if any,
Yes.
about rare
Genetics.
conditions, right?
Yeah.
And they did not learn about, skewed X inactivation, which explains my genetics and why I have.
Skewed X, skewed X inactivation. Got it.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So, what I learned then was like, I have to be able to talk about this in
Mm.
an intelligent way so that every time I go to the doctor, which would happen, or go to the hospital for whatever reason, I mean, many doctors said, you can't possibly have hemophilia. You must have something else.
Yeah.
Well, let me teach you a few things.
How did that make you feel when your physician was trying to gaslight you, so to speak, and tell you that you didn't have what you said you had?
Well, it was just amazing that they would, number one, this was happening when I was a kid, a teenager. Often my parents were right there with me. And I'll never forget being at a hospital while we were on vacation. Doctors didn't know us. And my mother said, we need this medicine. You can call her doctor back at home. And the doctor refused to do any of it because what he knew was what he knew,
Yeah.
and that women don't bleed. And that I remember being in a lot of pain
Yeah.
and thinking, does he think I'm faking this? Like, how could I possibly be faking this?
Yep.
Because it's quite obvious. And
Yeah.
that fact that he wasn't listening to my mother, and it just made me so mad. And that's when I realized I have to be smarter than them and to be able to speak intelligently about my
Sure.
position.
Yeah. No, I'm actively developing programs for patients so that and I know that organizations like yours do as well because it's unfortunate, but patients need to be their own best advocate.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's unfortunate that you had to learn that young. But I would say that your experience is what's allowed you to excel as an advocate, both in the nonprofit world, but also in industry. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I think what has really helped me in industry is bring reality
Mm,
inside, internally, to a lot of really good hearted, very smart people who really are dedicated to trying to help people. Um, and they want people to feel better and to get better. But if they don't have their own lived experience, they really just don't
don't
know.
get it. Yeah.
Yeah. So my one of my main roles is to bring in the patient voice internally and to ensure that any decisions that are being made internally that they're informed by patient experience, either through me reporting what I've heard or bringing patients in or setting up panels or
Mm,
advisory council, any number of ways to do that. Because, you know, when a person says, Well, it's only one injection a week. That's not too bad. Is it? Well, maybe for you, but have you
Sure.
had one injection a week? You know, I actually told someone that said something like that. I said, well, I start my own IVs every week. Do you want me to show what that's like? And
Sure.
his eyes got big, his face got pale.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
yeah, and I said, so maybe it's a bigger deal than you thought, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So yeah,
And I will say it's something that we see in the industry all the time where, oh, we have this pill, or I remember very vividly in the case of rheumatoid arthritis product in which they didn't check with the patient community on were the pens, the auto injector pens that they were using, were they usable for
yeah.
patients with rheumatoid arthritis? And in this case, it was no. So you've spent God knows how many dollars to create this product in this form that no one can use.
And it's not very expensive to set up some human factor studies and give them a demo of the pen and say, let's walk through how you would have to use this. What is this like for you? And let them talk you through it. And then you can go back without having spent all of the money
Yeah.
to have all of them created and to fix it. Because when you invest upfront and you don't get patient feedback, that's so insanely expensive for the company because they're not going to go back and retrofit
No.
or
Yeah.
change it, right?
Yep.
So let's save
We're
some
moving
money
forward.
by talking about talking to the patients first. We're going to
Yes.
save time and money.
Yeah. And I think that's something that your organization has really helped to implement within your company is this let's go to the patients early and often.
Mhm.
With that said, what do you feel, in the industry overall is still most misunderstood about the advocacy function?
Well, it's a real need is to better able to find good metrics to
Mm,
measure our impact.
yep.
The impact of relationships is not easy to measure
Hmm.
on the business. Like how does having a relationship with a representative of the company, how does that make things better for the company? You and I both know that if you know and trust somebody from a company, that is very valuable. But I can't I can't measure what that means in terms of what the bottom line looks
Yeah.
like. Right?
Yep.
So that is the reason why I think companies don't understand the value of advocacy is they can't,
So
measure
tangible.
it. Yes, they can't
Yeah.
measure always. Like we can measure the number of programs that we do. We can even ask patients, what was the impact of this education? Is it going to change? Have any of your intentions changed in terms of how you talk to your doctor or what resources you're going to look for? But it's difficult. So I think that they just don't understand the value of that, and that um, when I'm faced with looking at two different products that are equal in efficacy and safety, I can tell you I look at the company who is most involved with the community and
Yeah.
who knows me the most
Yeah.
and demonstrates
It's a fantastic point. With it, this has come up on a couple of episodes of this show, and I just had this conversation this morning. Uh, I don't think the commercial leaders in industry are aware of how important patient to patient dialogue is in a treatment decision for patients. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that for yourself. As you said, if you have product A versus product B and they on paper are exactly the same efficacy, you go to the one that you know is working with the community. But what might that look like for other patients?
well, when there's innovation that happens in a community where there hasn't been any, it often explodes within short order, right? I know in the world of hemophilia, we only had a couple of companies in the business, and then all of a sudden, there was this explosion of new mechanism of action and
Yeah,
you know different options for replacement factor. And what happens is you get together with your friends in the community. You're at a patient event, an educational program on Facebook and Instagram,
yeah,
asking, what do you know about company X and their product? What was that like for you? Did you feel like it helped? Did you have any side effects?
mm,
If so, what were they? Um, is it easy to take? And that's really important. But at the same time, I've seen a lot of misinformation happening in
sure,
those
yep,
places.
yep,
So I think getting information from the community is really critical because it kind of points you in the right direction, and you get some high level information about how people are experiencing using the medicine.
sure,
But
yeah,
it's really important to go find a trusted medical
yes,
provider, whoever that
yep.
might be. It could be, a nurse. Uh, some nurses are better than the doctors, right?
I would
So,
100% agree. Yeah,
so you go and talk to them. But, and I know that in my community, if you have a trusted person who works for industry and you have a long lasting relationship with that person, and
yeah,
that there's always been transparency and meaningful education and authenticity,
mm,
then uh, that information from that person is going to be more valuable than coming from someone you don't know.
sure. Yeah, no, it's so vital that our commercial leaders recognize this discussion takes place, and that at the end of the day, the patient is the ultimate customer.
Right.
I think there's still some companies that are locked in on the doctor as the customer. But going back to your colleague that had said, it's just one injection a week. Um, they're not doing it,
That's
right?
right.
And the doctor's
Not
not
doing
taking
it.
the medication usually. So it's really the patient that matters.
Yeah, it's very interesting because when I was in my former role, when I was working in the world of hemophilia,
Yeah.
I went into a very well known physician's office here where I live. There had been a new innovation where there was more time between infusions because people with hemophilia were essentially having to do IV infusions every other day, which
Mm,
is extremely burdensome, especially if you're a kid. And he stated that he just didn't feel like it was that much of a difference of going from every other day to every 4 days.
yeah.
And I said, well, what have your patients said
Mm,
about that? He said, well, I don't know. He clearly hadn't asked the patient. I said, do you want to hear a one story, just one story about a patient experience?
yeah.
And the story of a mom with two boys with hemophilia that both had to be infused every other day, also had another sibling to take care of and probably pets and a spouse. And he said, you know what the mornings are like, because you want to give it in the morning. So when you're at school, you're fully
Sure.
protected. And what do you think it's like when you have to get two infusions in the morning every other day, get them breakfast, get their bags packed, take care of the other sibling who is feeling left out, walk the
And
dogs?
being
Yes,
boys, so to speak, in the morning to begin with.
right. And he just looked at me. He goes, well, I guess I hadn't really thought about it that way. Hmm.
Hmm. There's the problem,
Yeah,
right? Yeah, and
exactly.
that's where again patients knowing that there are support programs out there, that there are voices out there fighting for them, but also a listening ear. And I know a lot of the patient advocacy organizations that I've worked with are just unbelievable at being able to connect people, so
Yes.
that there's someone else out there like you. Right.
Absolutely. It's so important. And I have met so many people just in my daily life where I learned that they've recently got diagnosed with something or they have been diagnosed for years. And they say, well, I've never met someone who has whatever the condition is. I said, well, have you looked for a patient advocacy group? And they look at me like I'm speaking another language. I said, well,
Sure.
there's probably a group of people who are like you. Let's look it up. And I
Yeah.
pull it up on my phone and I said, why don't you call them and see? And then I'll talk to them later and they're just flabbergasted because even doctors don't think to point them in the direction of
No.
those
Right.
organizations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they
Yeah.
have difficulty finding them at times too,
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say to those leaders of patient advocacy groups, you have your responsibility to your patients, but you also have the responsibility to inform the providers of the very important services that you provide
Yes.
patients and get
Yeah.
those providers involved as much as you can.
Yeah.
Uh, Critical. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Actually, one of the tools that we as an organization just built called advocatebridge.org, and it's a site that anyone can go to, put in whatever disease diagnosis they've gotten, and it will show all of the nonprofits, both patient advocacy organizations, professional societies, if anyone's trying to find a professional for continued dialogue on treatment, and community-based organizations that are
That's
aligned with that therapeutic area. Because
that
it,
that is
the
so good.
barriers, if we can knock down those barriers and get patients to the right people, we know that they'll have better outcomes.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing about patient advocacy communities is that
Mm,
it gives you uh, permission to push back a little bit
yeah.
with your providers because
Yep.
you're new to being chronically ill. You don't always know that.
Yeah.
And, you hear other people talk about their conversations with their doctors, and often people are surprised at first. Like you said, what to your doctor? Like you
Yes.
told the doctor what medicine you wanted to be on?
Yeah.
Told them?
Yep.
It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
I told them. And it allows them to see that relationship in a very different way than what society has sort of kind of set up as the doctor as God,
A
which
paternalistic
yes,
view, right? Yeah.
yes,
Actually, so the acronym you see there, Empowered, is a program we've developed for patients, which stands for educate, motivate, prepare, witness, recruit, and direct. So that if we can educate the patient and motivate, because I've dealt with, when I was going through opiates and doctor make that decision of getting off of them for 6 months, your identity crisis of, well, this is who I've been, or now I'm aligned with this diagnosis, that might all shift. Am I comfortable with that? So the motivation piece is big, but then preparation for going into that appointment. Have you even thought about the last 30, 60, 90 days and questions you want to ask, knowing that you can ask them as well? Um,
right.
and then witness, we don't expect you to be an expert, but if you've been educated on the incentives in healthcare, now you can witness and see what's happening. And then the last two there, recruit your care team and your support team so that you can direct your care. It's your job to get healthy. There are
Yeah,
plenty of people out there that want to support you. It's knowing where they are and building those teams. And as you referenced with the doctors, people should know that they can fire them and get another one.
absolutely. I can't tell you how many doctors I fired.
I'm sure.
Nurse
I'm sure.
practitioner. I love my
Yeah.
nurses, but
Yes.
I
Yes.
fired a few. So,
What what would you say motivates you the most to do the work that you do?
um, honestly, my favorite experience when I'm working is
Mm,
I spend a lot of time at my computer, but
sure.
I do get to go out. And it's on the weekends, which many people grumble about, but
Sure.
that's when I get to be with other people who I don't have their conditions. I work in a different communities now, but we experience the same kinds of things in managing living with the chronic
Sure.
illness,
Yeah.
right? So being able to do a program about telling the story of your symptoms is so empowering to watch them get it. When I
Yes.
talk about, don't just list out single words or numbers if there's a rating scale, like that's important, but now you have to tell the so
So
what.
what?
Yeah.
Mm.
So what now? So I work in a community of people that have neuromuscular weakness. It's very significant. It's very impactful. It impacts, some women of childbearing age, and often being pregnant or delivery exacerbates that weakness. And I asked her, she said, well, I have upper body strength weakness, and I, list some things that she could and couldn't do. But I said, well, what does that mean to you personally? She said, well, I guess it means I can't hold my baby. And I said,
Oh.
and what does that mean to you? She said, I'm a terrible mother.
Oh man. Yeah.
I mean, all it takes is to ask, so what does that mean to you? And so doctors don't have the time. I think doctors want to know. I really do in
Yeah.
general, but they are in a system that they have no control over right now. And so if the doctors don't have time or can't do that, then we have to do it. And so when I was able to talk through that with her, as to say, can you come up with at least one or two sentences about what it means and how to be the mom you want to be? What does that look
Mm.
like? And how that's a goal, and that's the goal you want to work on with your doctor to get back there.
That's fantastic. That is advocacy in its essence, ultimately, of reminding folks what's possible, but also that which they're missing out on in their current state, and that motivation of where do you want to get to. And I think that statement of what does this mean to you um, works also really well as I think about the work that you do internally, right? Of here's what patients have said, medical, regulatory, market access. What does that mean to you? How do you best knock down silos? May it have been in your nonprofit work, may it be in industry, to ensure that that patient voice percolates and is a part of all teams.
Well, the way I am doing it now, there's probably many different better ways, but is bringing those patients as much as possible into the discussions with
Sure.
all of those cross functional team members and their customers.
Yeah.
So when we have access people, I say, do you need a patient to go with your meeting for an important payer meeting? I
I
did
love
that.
that.
Yeah, it's so important. I had one person who was quite a spitfire, I brought with me, brought her on purpose because she was
Sure.
a self advocate. And one of the treatments for her condition was steroids.
Mm.
And that was the go to. It's cheap, it's been around forever. And she put her foot down when she was told, well, we're going to give you steroids. She said, no, no, you're not going to give me steroids. So sitting next to her in this meeting was this payer, a person representing an
Yeah.
insurance company.
Yeah.
And he said, well, when she said that, she said, well, I'm not going to take steroids. And he turned and looked at her and said, well, I guess you're just out of luck. And
Whoa.
I was getting ready to like step in and give him a piece of my
Yeah.
mind. But
Yeah.
my patient did so herself, and she did it beautifully and impactfully, and talked about why steroids was not the answer for her, and that there had to be other options and a path to those options. And he was stunned
I'm
and
sure.
didn't speak much
Yeah.
after. So,
Yeah.
but
It's
bringing those real life experience to those people who make decisions,
yes.
critical.
Yeah. And I think that this is really important for patients to know as well is that just because they have XYZ condition doesn't make them unimportant. It actually makes them even more important. And there are opportunities all over the place. You had talked about your advisory boards that you run and bringing in patients just to know that that's possible and that you can shape what's coming. Um, I'm sure there's dialogue around clinical trials and being a part of those and knowing that you're helping to advance medicine. Uh, I do want to go back though around some of the mistakes that have been made, and how do we best move patients to understand that those have been recognized and, more importantly, uh, done away with. We've fixed that um, so that they are more comfortable with clinical trials. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah. We are in desperate need of people to join clinical trials, and we
Mm-hmm.
want everybody to know that we recognize that there historically uh, have been very serious errors in the way that trials in the past were done, um, and that because of that, our government, our regulatory agencies have really put in very rigorous
Yeah.
regulations, expectations. The number of times our team goes and has conversations with the FDA, which we bring patients to as well,
Fantastic.
yes, uh, is incredible. Like in a way,
Mm.
I was starting to get a little frustrated. Like, gosh, can't we just go and do this? And
Sure.
I, you know, okay, we got to go slow to go fast to make sure that everybody is safe as much as possible. That if something becomes, you know, something becomes people become aware of something that
Mm-hmm.
isn't safe, that there is a definite expectation and how to make everyone aware
Yes.
of
A
any.
mechanism to alert.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes, like very stringent expectations that are really it's drilled into all of us, and we are just so regulated, and it can be feel a little bit cumbersome, but we know it's there for a purpose. And when people do go into a clinical trial, and I can speak from experience, I was in a clinical trial. Um, it's a big responsibility, and it takes time.
Mm.
Uh, but without people in the trials, we wouldn't have new medicine,
Yeah. Yep.
you know.
And I think
And
that a lot of the confusion is people think you either get the medication or you get nothing.
right, and
And
that
I
is
think,
not the case. It
yes,
is not the case. I mean, I can only speak for the companies that I worked for. The number one thing is we don't want people to get sicker
yes,
on our trial, right?
yep.
So we work very hard to make sure that at least the standard of care is provided. So when people are perhaps in the placebo group, though you may not know that, you're not being left with nothing. You're given
Exactly.
something to address your symptoms, to address your mechanism of disease
Yes.
while they run the study. Now, it may
Mm.
not exactly the protocol of treatment that you were on prior to the study, but that every study is different. So you'd have to go in and learn about it, what medications are allowed, what aren't allowed, and know that everybody's looking at you. You get the best care. I mean, I
Yeah.
had the best team of hematologists in the country, perhaps the world, when I was in the study,
Sure.
and they were
That's a
all
really Yeah,
yes,
that's a really important point for patients to recognize is that not only are you getting getting access to some experts that maybe you wouldn't, but that you're at least getting the standard of care. Typically, depending on the trial, you're not getting nothing. You're not getting a good old sugar pill like they did back in the day. Um, but really, what I want to point out for folks is that if there's anyone that would be anti anything to do with industry, it probably would be you,
Yes. Yes. Yeah,
right?
because when the medication that we took was infected with two viruses, I also was impacted
Yeah.
personally. My father was impacted, and all of my friends,
Yes.
90% of the people with severe forms of hemophilia were infected. There's only about 1% of us left. I'm one of the long-term survivors, and
Sure.
I had a lot of people mad at me when I moved into industry. I have people who are still mad at me, but
Well, I think it's important for people to know why you made the move.
yeah,
What?
I made the move because I wanted to be the mole, right? I wanted to be the one
Yeah.
to tell on these people that might do this bad stuff again.
Sure.
And I said that when I was doing my interview. I really took the interview sort of nonchalantly because I thought they're never going to hire me because I'm going to tell them exactly what I think. And I did. And I said, well, if anything goes wrong, I'm going to tell everyone, right? I
Yeah.
said, I don't need the job that much. I can always get a job.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and they said, well, that's why we want you. And that was a great
That's
answer.
great
And,
to hear.
and then they allowed me to see every step of the manufacturing process, like from the tiny little cells to the
Sure.
bioreactors to the filling the bottles and lyophilizing them in Germany, and
Sure.
I got to see just all of the things that are put in place to keep these products safe during the manufacturing process. All of the steps that it takes to just do that is remarkable. So I also realized that as the president of the board, I had of the organization,
Yeah.
I had a really hard time getting movement with the industry partners to do what I thought would be helpful for our community. I had much better luck influencing from within. So if somebody thought, I don't know, doing some kind of marketing event or educational event, they thought it was a great idea. And I realized because of my own personal experience, like that's not the best idea with this community. So we would talk about it and we'd say, this particular way of doing this educational event is not going to resonate. And I can tell you from personal experience and tell you from the community experience. And we could change things so that we would go out with something that was meaningful.
We had prefaced it with all of the trouble that you ran into, and then and then going through the hiring process and letting them
Oh,
know that you're going to tell everyone.
right, right. Yes. So actually that was for me to be hired into the company that wanted me
Yeah.
to do the patient engagement planning. And what I was able to do then, they said, that's why we want to hire you, is we know you're going to do that. And I thought, well, that's pretty remarkable. And
Yeah.
what happened is exactly, I felt like everybody has to look at us because there were other people from the community, a handful of us that were working on it. And I said, well, you have to look at us every day while we're working on things. So you can't really forget about us. And,
Yep.
you know, we were able to be very honest when whoever it would be there's all sorts of functions that try to put together really good education and programming for people to learn more about their condition. And some ideas are really good and some ideas just don't make sense for that community. And so we were able to go in and influence from within and say, for people living with a bleeding disorder, this isn't going to make a lot of sense. We may need
Yep.
to change that. uh,
Yep.
I think I told you that one company sent the summer camp that I was running at the time 100 frisbees to camp.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, what are we going to do with 100 frisbees? Like maybe three or four, maybe, but 100 frisbees. Like, if you had
Yeah.
talked to me, I could have told you what
Yeah.
we could have done,
What
right?
we needed. Yeah.
Yes, yes,
And God, there's probably a lot more better use for that money than 100 frisbees,
exactly.
for the campers. But to be cognizant of your time, you know, how do you describe what you do to your boys?
Uh, I describe, well, the way they describe it to other people is that my mom works for a company that makes medicine for people who are sick, and she helps people to learn how to talk to their doctors. And that's kind of
That's
right.
pretty good.
Yeah.
That's I like that. I like that.
Yeah.
My last question for you. What would you tell your 20, let's say 18 or 20-year-old self if you could
Oh,
go back and talk to her today?
oh. That was in the throes of finding out about all the bad stuff that was happening in
Yeah.
our community. And I was so full of anger and
Mm,
how dare somebody do that to us? Um, there are just a few bad people out there, is what I've decided. I see a lot of people say online, you know, they want us to be sick so that they can sell medicine to us. And I really do not believe that. There's enough sickness out in the world. We can go on and do something else with another illness, right?
exactly.
So I believe that 99% of the people who work in industry are good people and who want to use their skills and their just brilliant minds to help us. And what I'd want to say to her is that despite all of these burdens that you currently have and you're overwhelmed by are really your superpowers. And you just have to learn how to use them, and you can help other people to learn theirs.
I love that. My favorite quote is from Carrie Ann Lima, which is "Your mess is your message,"
Yes,
right?
that's so true.
And it's what I have seen played out with every person I've spoken to on our show here. It's always I got here, and if you look back at everything that's happened, they were built for this role, and it's so true.
It is so true, and I think some people don't believe me when I say this. I mean, I am doing pretty well. I'm fairly healthy right now, but it might be a different story if I was sick, not able to do anything. But I wouldn't trade it, honestly. I don't know what kind of person I would have been without it. Like, I know what's important. I feel like I know what's important.
Yeah,
I don't get wrapped up in unimportant things, and uh, I like who I am, and it's because of what I've had to go through.
it's given you that perspective, and I tell people all the time, "Yep, 18 years of chronic pain, but I wouldn't change a moment of it
Yeah,
because it's what now allows me to do what I do."
and
You know,
what you're doing is amazing, amazing.
thank you,
I just
thank
love
you,
everything that you're doing. I read everything that you write, so keep on
thank you.
doing that great work.
We will, we will. Well, Jelly, it was a absolute privilege today. I appreciate your time and thank you for all that you've done and continue to do for patients every day.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Have a good rest of your day.
You too.
Okay.